Hello, you're listening to Linguistically Aware, a conversation based podcast about the ways we use, understand, and think about language. My name is Dusan, a grad student of linguistics at the University of Calgary, and I'm sitting down with linguists, experts who study language, to talk about a number of roles language plays in our lives. This is CJSW 90.9 FM, broadcasting on the traditional territories of all the people who make their homes in the Treaty 7 of southern Alberta. Today, I talked to Darin Flynn, who is an associate professor of linguistics at the University of Calgary. Darin teaches phonology, the scientific study that explains how humans arrange speech sounds into sentences. His research expertise also extends to Indigenous languages, African American English, and most important for today's talk, language in rap music. On the podcast, we talked about the ways rap music relates to language science, how rappers are evolving language, and what he's learned about rappers' use of speech sounds and grammar.
Linguists who've never heard about rap will tell you that on the sound side, there's often a binary ideal. So the ideal word will have, or say the ideal phrase will have two words or maybe two stresses in it, and an ideal clause will tend to have two phrases each with two of those, and that turns out to be a typical bar in rap, which has those. You have the four beats and usually a stressed syllable or an accented syllable. We can talk about the difference between those. Either falls on the beat directly or it can come a little bit before, a little bit after.
This is just one of the amazing thoughts Dr. Flynn shared with us, but let's listen to the entire conversation. Dr. Flynn, you teach a course at the University of Calgary, which is called Rap Linguistics. The course has been praised as one of the most exciting courses at the university. Why don't we start with that? What is rap linguistics, and what can you tell us about it?
Well, it's the way the calendar describes it. It recognizes that rap is a leading music genre out there. And it happens to be really dominated by language. So it makes a lot of sense to look at the language inside rap music. And so this course explores how this art form, which is creatively flourishing out there, how it relates to language science.
Okay.
And so we examine how sounds get manipulated, how words get manipulated, how grammar gets manipulated, how meaning gets manipulated in rap, and what all of that reveals about language in our minds and language in our society.
Great. How did you come to this idea of teaching rap linguistics?
It was first suggested by Francie Piscicoli. She's one of our admins in the office, and this was years ago. And took a while to take. It was a bit of a far-fetched idea at the time. But I first taught it in 2014, I think it was. Mm-hmm. And it got some good press coverage, and after that, it was pretty easy to schedule it fairly regularly. So we have it on a three-year rotating basis. We got it down to 2 years. This year it happens to be back-to-back year, and students are happy about that, and I am too because I love teaching it. So it's not offered every year, unfortunately, but I'd love it if it could be. Yeah.
What has been their response to this course in terms of numbers, and how have they responded in general?
Yeah, like whatever classroom is available, the class is full. So like last winter, I think the classroom could take 129 students, and that's how many students I had. And this year, my classroom had capacity of 98, and that's how many students I have. So it's I assume that if we had larger classrooms, that it would fill up too. There's always a waiting list too. So
let me ask you first: how has your training in linguistics contributed to developing this course?
Well, I'm a sound specialist, which means that my first interest was how the rhythm and rhyme and different dialects play out in rap music. I'm always very interested in that. The sorts of rhymes that people can pull off depending on which vowels they have in their dialects, and the whole rhythm behind rap and the overall prosody, the ups and downs of pitch. It's something I'm acutely aware of, so that was always on my mind. But I actually entered rap music originally because my undergraduate and master's studies, this was at the University of Ottawa in the 90s, was on African American vernacular English, which is the form of speech that is spoken by lots of African Americans, primarily in the U.S., but also somewhat in Canada. And I was working on grammar, things like multiple negation, I ain't seen nothing, that sort of thing. And I got a lot of my data from rap music, which I was listening to, because rap is a form of somewhat authentic language that's put out there by performers. And by somewhat authentic, I mean that if somebody's faking, African American vernacular English grammar in their music, it'll be picked up by listeners. They're very knowledgeable listeners, and being fake in hip hop is quite damning. So you can, to a certain extent, factoring out that it's performative in nature, you can put some cred into the type of grammatical data that you get. And so you can look at examples from Kanye or Jay-Z and look at the grammar that they used and see if that gives you some insight into how African American vernacular English is, how it works. So that's how I entered it originally, the rap linguistics. But more as I've taught this course, I've become much more appreciative of wordplay, figurative language, the things like metaphors and so on. So I've increased my knowledge of that too. This is something that I think studying rap music has grown inside me. That wasn't originally a primary interest of mine or an expertise, but over time that's grown and it makes sense. So you start appreciating more and more different things in the music.
What content tools, what devices do rappers usually use? How are they using these?
Well, the linguists who've never heard about rap will tell you that on the sound side there's often a binary ideal. So the ideal word will have, or say the ideal phrase will have two words or maybe two stresses in it, and an ideal clause will tend to have two phrases each with two of those, and that turns out to be a typical bar in rap, which has those. You have the 4 beats and usually a stressed syllable or an accented syllable. We can talk about the difference between those. Either falls on the beat directly or can come a little bit before, a little bit after. And then between these 4 dots is the way Rakim describes them. You can insert other syllables. Some of them may even be stressed syllables between these dots. And in traditional poetry, when those dots come after the beats, we call those falling rhythms, things like trochees and dactyls. And when they come before, we call those rising rhythms. So it's things like anapestic rhythm or iambic rhythm. But there's lots of others that you can find in rap where you get a Bacchic rhythm, which is basically rising, but it ends with like 2 big accents. So it's like da da da, and a sequence of those has quite an effect. You have the amphibrachic rhythm, which is really popular right now. So the so-called Migos flow, which is basically having a syllable on both sides of the beat. So it sounds like da 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 da, like words like Atlanta, and. There's just a huge range of rhythms like that you can study poetically, but it's all about how many syllables you cram before and after. Now, the truth is that if you stick to a particular rhythm like that for too long, even say across a couplet, it gets a bit tiresome. So MCs will switch up their flow and And often there's some meaning behind that switch up so that it'll represent a change in the narrative, or so it's not just to avoid boredom, it conveys something. And so if you have a couplet that's just quite chaotic, it has all these clashing beats and clashing rhythms, you can't really figure it out. It's often that's exactly the intention that the MC wants to create. But then you'll find that the MC will regroup after that couplet, maybe returning to a rhythm or flow that they had at the beginning of the song, to get the listener back on track. But then again, they'll depart again from that rhythm. So looking at all of that is a lot of fun. A lot of fun, yeah.
Do accomplished rap artists follow these patterns of fitting lyrics perfectly to the beat? Put it colloquially, do they sometimes exit this pocket?
Oh yeah, all the time. It's more like jazz improvisation. You just kind of, you can ride the beat, but you fall behind and catch up to it and fall after it, and you can have a sequence of, say, 3 words. So I mean, famously, MCs will often break away from the whatever rhythm they've created at the end of a bar by just often having a single rhyming or slant rhyming word. That's kind of like so that the bar ends with a bang, regardless of what they've done before. So a lot of MCs like to mark off the ends of their lines that way. So it ends with a little bit of a punch, but sometimes they'll do what poets call enjambments, where they'll just carry over to the next line in a sequence, and it's kind of it's entrancing because the rhythm just doesn't stop. But yeah, you can only take so much, and MCs will make fun of people who just stick too rigidly to a particular flow. You'll find videos of, say, Snoop Dogg or Eminem making fun of MCs that just have the same Migos flow. They just all sound the same, and so the only times they'll ever use that flow sometimes to make fun of other MCs that use that, because they just have such a richer repertoire of rhythms and effects that they can create. And of course, that's just in the background, because, as I mentioned earlier, what's really important is the narrative, the storytelling that's going on, or the wordplay, or what they're trying to convey in the song. So the rhythmic part, the rhythm and rhyme, is certainly part of the aesthetic quality of the song. But you don't want the rhythm to become so prominent that it distracts from what's being said.
Yeah.
And so if it's too rhythmic, it gets in the way. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I understand. You've also mentioned the wordplay. Can you tell us something more about that?
Yeah, so I mean, the way it works is this takes us into psycholinguistics. So something that we know from the study of language is that when you say a word, believe it or not, words that have the same pronunciation, those are called homophones, like homo, same, phone, sound. All words that have homophones are activated, and those words are active in your brain subconsciously, but then from the context, you converge on the proper use. And over 40% of English words have homophones. Some English words have like dozens of homophones. So it's really it's an everyday fact about language. Not only that, words that rhyme also affect each other, and affect each other in really interesting ways. So when you say a word that like check, or the words neck and spec and so on, respect, all those words are activated in your mind. So on the one phenomenon that's really interesting is that MCs play with is that if they use 2 words, they can be quite far apart, say 3 bars apart, 4 bars apart. But if they rhyme, those 2 words, because they rhyme, are brought together in your mind, and your mind is forced to find what's the connection and meaning, or how is the MC blending the meanings or bringing these 2 together just because these words rhyme. But on the other hand, the wordplay has to do with the fact that it's just a basic function of language, that when you say words, other words that rhyme and other words that sound the same are activated. And of course, words that have similar meaning are activated too. And so what MCs will often do, it's not that crazy to find 6 meanings packed into a single word. And what the MC will have done in their craft is set up all of those meanings to be perceived on some level or another, more or less conscious by the listener. And so this is the way this is done is through something that psycholinguists call priming. So priming is when a previous stimulus, like a previous sentence, will prime you to get a particular meaning. So if I start talking about chocolate, it wouldn't be as far-fetched as if I started talking about fashion, say, suddenly. Mm-hmm. And that's because when I mentioned Eminem's music, it triggers Eminem's candy, chocolate, Hershey's, etc. That's all activated in your head that's just the way the brain works. And so if you find that in a rap song, somebody's talking about M&Ms and suddenly they start talking about chocolate and stuff, you can tell that they're just calling on these different meanings, often on purpose. And there's a lot of joy in that. A big misunderstanding of rap is that it's puns is just to be humorous, that kind of wordplay, but it's not at all. So there is some humor, so and it's brilliant. So like when Eminem says, "You're not afraid," he says, like a for Christmas, his gift is a curse. It's really clever, and so it might bring a smile or a smirk to somebody. But what you'll often find is that he will recycle words and bars from other songs, which brings the success of that previous song into his next song. So when he uses, most extreme example, say if you use the word spaghetti, that is a loaded word for an Eminem. It's just not like any other word. So when he brings it into another song, all the success, say, of 8 Mile or is carried over. Lose Yourself spells it out, but that all those emotions, all those listening experiences, all those radio successes are carried over into that song. And so all those things are primed in a way that MCs that you listen to a lot will be activating in their with their wordplay. So it's basically great marketing, and it's really valuable skills, which is one of the things that my students study, is that they learn about how you, when you market a product or when you are trying to create a brand, even a brand for yourself, how you do that. And it's because we want to reverse engineer what makes certain MCs really successful and figure out what are their tools of the trade. And a lot of it has to do with just making explicit what listeners already know. Like they know all this stuff. It's just somewhat subconscious. That's what linguistics is, because knowledge of language is subconscious knowledge. And you just make that knowledge explicit more and more. And the more you become aware of what that knowledge is, how it is that we speak and understand each other, the more you can play with that. And of course, MCs are acutely aware of language. And
she had high heel shoes with a high-class tone, in vogue with 6 deep, never ever alone. Always a full mailbox on a cellular phone, catching attention, eyes, ears, and bones. Stepping in the front door, expecting a free cup. Excuse me, queen, that's gonna be $5. Hip-hop ain't paying the bills in this apartment, and we don't play the pretty face coupon market. So move on barking with your blue blonde jargon. Break your wallet, take it to the keg and park it. It's the kind of party where you spew off target, miss the bathroom sink and hit the living room carpet. Zoom it so hard that you chew on garbage, confused and long gone from the booze and carbon. Roughnecks got beef, but the two bound to start shit and teasing business like the Ulan market. The only problem is the party's at large, causing a loud ruckus congregation in my backyard. I got word that the neighbor's gonna call the cops unless y'all get it together and choose one. The house or the garage? Take that to the house or the garage. Girl, I know you got enough clout to shut the city down, but for now you gotta bounce from my yard and choose one. That's the house or the garage. Gonna take that to the house or the garage. Ripping and tearing up the track 'cause we live so fast that I ain't got time to die young. Just slap me 2 shots and say choose your.
Many rappers use rhymes that are not typical.
yeah.
They rhyme certain words that otherwise you wouldn't think could be rhymed.
Yeah.
Why is that so, and how come?
Yeah, so there's 2 things. Those are called forced rhymes. And forced rhymes can be quite natural in the sense that a lot of words have alternate pronunciations. So you'll have, for instance, the AUNT can be pronounced ant or aunt, or aunt or aunt, depending on the dialect. And so you can rhyme aunt or aunt into, depending on which other vowels are in the bars, you can rhyme those in. And the thing is all of those are acceptable pronunciations in different dialects. And because a lot of MCs come from areas where people do have that awe, like aunt, say New York is the birthplace of rap music, and so that open O sound, aunt, when you hear it in a rap song, it's not far-fetched. It just seems kind of natural. And African Americans tend to say aunt and aunt or aunt more than aunt. But if there's to say aunt, because it works in a rhyme, it wouldn't raise an eyebrow. So it's that you can take words that or give them a different stress, but even the stress can vary. So if they talk about something being composite, because that rhymes with some other word like offer, something just before offer, composite, something like that. But then if they say composite, that rhymes better for something that they said before too. It better matches the rhythm that they're going after. It won't raise an eyebrow. The more interesting ones are the ones that are called transformative rhymes, and this is where a word is deliberately mispronounced, and that is actually a reality of everyday speech. So take irregular past tense in English, which is very hard to learn. That say the past tense of fall is fell, right? But the past tense of freeze is froze, and you need to learn all these things. So you'll know that a lot of people will say freezed or falled or something like that. And you will find that some MCs will just do that, and they'll say, they'll use kind of an unusual past tense form or participle form that they might not actually use in their everyday speech, but it really works in the song. And that's, again, just part of the real world. So we know that there's been a study by Joe Stemberger, for instance, that was quite compelling, that shows that people are more likely to make mistakes when the preceding word has the same vowel, so when they slant rhyme. So if you're talking about some milk, you would say the milk froze, in the freezer or something. But if you're talking about the cream, they might say the cream freezed, because the E sound is carried over. In the same way, if you're talking about the snow, you might say, oh, the snow fell. But if you're talking about chalk on a chalkboard, or say, you might say the chalk falled, and so Joe Stemberger showed that those vowels are carried over into the next word. And this is part of, those are speech errors, but MCs will just allow for those kinds of speech errors when it works for, say, in a rhyme that's dominated by slant rhymes. Then you might see falled as opposed to fell. And listeners won't blink, or they'll even enjoy it, because, of course, what you want to do is keep the element of surprise. There is something called poetic license that artists always have. And poetic license allows poets to break any rule of grammar. Like, literally any rule of grammar can be broken under some circumstances. Any pronunciation rule or any grammar rule, even any meaning rule. So you can kind of force a word into a particular pronunciation or grammar. And that is found in everyday speech. We just don't register it as much. And MCs have that poetic license, and it's lovely because it keeps an element of surprise. But again, this, as a linguist, this shows me how words are constructed and how they're constructed online and how they're processed by listeners. So this is that area of psycholinguistics, which is fascinating to me, and it dovetails very nicely with research, really dry papers out there in my field that just really explain nicely what an MC is doing and why they're able to pull it off. It turns out that so-called errors are naturally occurring phenomena. They're everyday occurrences, and they happen so much in regular speech that we only ever notice them sometimes when you you don't pronounce a word properly and it comes out as a taboo word or something, like you'll notice that, like, oh, you used the wrong word or something. Or when it matches another word that's completely inappropriate, then you'll notice it. But in practice, we do those sort of things all the time.
Are there any examples from the rap music that became the norm? On top of my head, like Stan.
Oh yeah, sure. That's an actual word in the dictionary now.
Yeah,
that came straight out of Eminem's brilliant song. And it's now a verb too, like to stan someone.
Yeah,
and you'll find that in the dictionary. So no, that's very concrete. But more broadly, people that listen to rap music become really familiar with African American vernacular English grammar and vocabulary and lexicon. And so it's a bit of a touchy area. So you'll find grammatical constructions that are very specific to Black English, that Black American English and Black vernacular, working class Blacks in the States. And you'll find people will often use it in their tweet or something, or in social media, and they use it properly because they've learned how it works grammatically. But it's often for comedic effect. I mean, they're clearly appropriating a grammatical process that's not part of their own grammar in many cases, and yet that's a thing. So if you look at most memes, it would be, if somebody's just saying, I'd be working, they're just Instagramming a picture of themselves hard at work or something, and it's this white girl or something, and I'd be working, and everybody gets that that's borrowed from African American vernacular English, and everybody gets that they've learned how to use that from rap music, and they end up being almost like, a song will have, some extreme forms, some big rap songs, like some of Lupe Fiasco's The Mural, for instance, probably has like 3,000 word, it's like a full essay. And so some songs are like rich with language. So if you listen to The Mural over and over again, you're getting a lot of language content. Same thing with, say, Rap God by Eminem. There's just a lot of, you're getting 2,000-3,000 words. Not all rap songs are like that, but if you consume a lot of rap, you're getting a lot of Black English grammar. And so I would describe the language as spreading in a lot of minds out there. And then people are trying to sort out how much of that they're allowed to use. And there's a lot of gray area. So, for instance, Indigenous Canadians, there's some sort of natural affinity that they have with African Americans, working class African Americans in the States. They've been dispossessed in ways that are similar. There's kind of social prejudice and so on that one could say that the racism that African Americans face in the States, the counterpart of that in Canada, are the Indigenous people here. Yeah. Even though, of course, there are Indigenous people in the States, too, who also face prejudice. And so there's some natural affinity. So it's not uncommon or uncomfortable for me to meet an Indigenous young person who's, they might be an MC or they might just be a consumer of rap music, and they talk with a lot of Black English grammar, Black English vocabulary, and that works. That's also true of Hispanic people. And that's true both in Canada, but especially in the States, where, in fact, a lot of Hispanics will live in the same neighborhoods, the Bronx and so on, as their African American peers, and so you'll find, Hispanic MC like Big Pun or something like that, Fat Joe or whatever. They speak with. Black English grammar, and they even use very loaded Black English words like the N-word, and they get away with it because they somehow have some cred there, and yet a working class white guy just can't get away with that. But the working class white guy, so Eminem is a prime example. When Eminem uses non-standard language, I would say the vast majority of his non-standard language is actually non-standard white English. It's like working class white English. Okay. So when he's using ain't or negative negation or them shoes or unusual participles, or you can just go on and on and on. All these non-standard bits of grammar on Eminem's part are just part of his working class white English, but he also uses a little bit of Black English grammar, but just tastefully, not nearly as much as other African Americans as that are from the same city do, and it's just to signal his respect to the fact that that's the language of hip hop culture, and that he's part of. So he's able to pull it off, but there are some things he knows he just can't do, like he can't use the N-word, for instance, which is just off bounds. So it's quite tricky to figure out how, as Black English grammar and vocabulary and pronunciation spread around the world through rap, who's allowed to take those and put them to use. And that it's quite a fascinating sociolinguistic phenomenon to walk that line to what's allowed and what's not allowed, and you get really interesting phenomena. So in Canada, there were a lot of refugees and some immigrants from places like Somalia, especially in the 90s, and you'll get Sudanese more recently too, and they're learning English as they arrive here, and a lot of them learn English through rap music, and so they end up talking, Black American English in Canada in a way that's really interesting, and because they, again, consume a lot of rap music, and it's not grammar or words that you'd find in the surrounding Canadian society, working class or otherwise. So it's quite interesting how the language of rap is being spread to other communities that just have no historical connection to, like, the true African American community in the States that are the descendants of slaves, and as part of American history. And people that come straight from Africa to, say, some suburb in Toronto, they don't have that history, but they'll adopt that spoken code, and rap is facilitating that. So there's some just mind-boggling sociolinguistic stuff to investigate.
Who is entitled to certain taboo words in rap music? And does that have to do something with dialectal differences as well?
Yeah, because, if you use, say, finna, which means fixing to, like I'm about to do something, it is a Southern thing. So if you're a white Southerner, you could say that and get away with it. Right. If you're a white Northerner and you've picked that up from African American friends or listening to rap music, it's you've clearly appropriated Black English at that moment, and because you can't claim that it came from the Southern white English. You clearly got it from your Black peers, so it's not easy to figure out what you're allowed to use or not. So there's some clear, obvious lines, which is like the N-word is the most extreme, and that's just because in white English, the closest counterpart to that word, I'll just say ninja, is the word that rhymes with trigger. And so the word that is used by African Americans, they never, ever, ever, ever use the word that rhymes with trigger. They just don't. It's just the most offensive word. It's been described by specialists as the atomic bomb of slurs, and so it's one that they don't use among even themselves. Like, why would they? So they have the word that rhymes with, say, ninja, which is used in lots and lots of different ways, so many interesting ways, including just means guy or dude. It's completely neutral. It has no negative connotations whatsoever. It even has some positive connotations when it's used in a possessive form, like my ninja, and it can mean my pal or even my lover in relationships. So and it can be used for women, for that white ninja over there, blah blah blah. Can be used for a cat, like that orange ninja jumped off the roof and survived or something. You can use it in all these ways. Not a single one of them is offensive, And yet that's just a word that's off bounds for most whites because it's too close to the word that rhymes with trigger. So it's just prevented from entering. And more importantly, because the word ninja, that just means something like dude, it has lots of different meanings. Because it's not part of white Englishes, the only corresponding word when you hear ninja in white Englishes is the word that rhymes with trigger. And so that word is activated in people's heads. And so when people use that word, they think of the other word, whereas that's almost not the case in African American English, where the word that rhymes with trigger just isn't part of the language. It's part of maybe white English, and so there's the word ninja is used with high frequency, and it has nothing but positive meanings. And it has nothing but positive meanings for somebody like Eminem, but he doesn't use it because he knows how it would be perceived, and so that's the most extreme. But in between, there's grammar and pronunciation that you have to find a careful balance. And funnily enough, white MCs, when you look at this, they tend to land on, for grammar, a figure of about 15%. So when there's a black grammatical device, such as one is called... It's leaving words like is and am and so on out. So it's saying, when she says she cool or we cool or something like that, that's something that's quite specific to African American vernacular English. You'll find that African Americans, especially working class ones, especially males, will drop that is and are and so on. The majority of the time, up to 60, 70%, even 90% in some circumstances, especially in performing their music and so on. But whereas a white rapper like Eminem will do that about 15% of the time. This is just enough to, signal, hey, I'm doing this, but not too much, And that's true of other grammatical features in Black English too. So grammar is one thing. There's just a little bit, but not too much. You don't want to overdo authenticity. You overplay your card or something. You've overstayed your welcome or whatever, because these are guests in hip-hop. But when it comes to pronunciation, then it's okay. So like R-lessness, for instance, dropping your R's at the ends of syllables, at the ends of words, is something that Eminem does quite regularly. It's in the range of like 75% of the time, 80% of the time, especially when he's performing, a little bit less in interviews. But it's not at all part of white Detroiters, including working class white Detroiters. They're not R droppers. It's not like white people in Boston or working class people in New York. They don't do that in Detroit. And so he's clearly taking on an African American pronunciation, and so his accent is decidedly African American. Or the way he pronounces his I's. To say my eye, he says my ah. That is African American, and it's not typical of white Detroiters. Well, it is true of certain white Detroiters. Like they have a lot of Appalachian people, but not from Eminem's ethnic background. So again, this is something he does very regularly. Like the vast majority of time, he won't say I, he'll say ah. So that's called monophthongization, and monophthongization is a property that African Americans got from the time when they were in the South, because Southerners do that too. And they've, as was R-lessness. The R-lessness too it was a property of the English that African Americans were exposed to and learned in the South is the one they brought all over the States. And then when other whites take that on, they do so quite intensely when it comes to pronunciation, and a lot less when it comes to grammar. But there are exceptions. They are whites. They're called Wiggas. They're the ones that just, they want to sound black so bad that they just use Black English grammar all the time. In addition to pronunciation, it comes across as a bit cringy.
So I got the microphone 1 2 1 2. Here I go again, ready to do damage, but just a little bit slower to let you know rages that Liverpool flow blower. I'm smooth and creamy, milky, silky, steamy. Eyes get wet and dreamy every time a brother see me. Cause they can't understand the gift, the tongues that left them standing still and dumb. And the dust day I bust what I must, and I must, son. Continue to crush
wanna be an instigator, dance cross the face. Cause no one is great. I be that chick with the hits and I'm hitting it. I be that chick with the lyrics and I'm spitting it. Microphones, I'm definitely ripping it. So come again, get nailed. It's like bang to the boogie. I'm one tough cookie. Bet you bite the clip loaded with lyrical awesomeness as I hit with my spitfire bullets with licks from my tongue. So watch me pull it. Take it to the hilt. I'm thick like quilt.
How has language evolved in rap music? Let's say from the 90s till now, we have a little bit different styles of rap.
I don't think the language has evolved that much. So if you compare gangsta rap from the 90s or even the late 80s, like DOC, I mean, yeah, if you look at some of the earliest gangsta rap, it's not all that different from if you fast forward to the present. What has changed is the style in rap. So on the one hand, early rap tended to have really obvious rhymes. There was the ends of bars rhymed, sometimes perfect rhymes. And when you listen to some of that today, it sounds a bit cringy. But even that's not fair, because when you go back, you see Big Daddy Kane and others, Rakim, even the earlier stuff, they had all sorts of complicated internal rhymes. And then on the other hand, the most recent popular music uses a lot more melody. And the most extreme form of that is what people disparagingly call mumble rap. And mumble rap is more about conveying emotions. Words are slurred. This is a great departure from previous rap and a lot of other continuing rap, where conveying the message is very important to the MC, so they tend to speak quite clearly, so you really know what they're saying. This newer stuff is more akin to how in heavy metal music there'd be so much shouting and yelling and slurred words that you really wouldn't know what's being said. And often when you look up the lyrics on Genius, you wish you didn't know. And that's also true of some mumble rappers too, so when Young Thug conveys just a much richer range of emotions through a kind of part singing, part rapping. And when you look up the lyrics of the song, it could be a party anthem, but you look up the lyrics and you find, wow, this is pretty dark. It's talking about incest and venereal diseases and things that, if people knew what he's talking about, they wouldn't be dancing along to the words. And that reminds me of the same thing with a lot of heavy metal music in the past, that it's not really understanding what's being said is a blessing. But on the other hand, one of the great things about less clear speech that you see nowadays is that it's like a Rorschach test where you can kind of read into, you hear whatever you want, because you can't quite make out what they're saying. You can just pick up this word or that word, but you create in your own head a sense of what they're saying, and so you can interpret the music however you like. And that was something that was always intended in music anyhow, regardless of whether it's this new genre of music or older forms of rap. There was always what the MC was, the story they were conveying is one thing, but the reason people have to see themselves in the music, and so they'll read, out of that metaphor, they'll extend it to a situation in their own life, or see themselves in that description that's in the rap music, even though that's not at all what the rapper originally intended. So it's I wouldn't say that's changed, but certainly the style has changed a lot.
I was doing a pretty extensive research, and I've noticed the worth of other MCs as well, such as Kanye, Drake, or Kendrick Lamar. They have all been manipulating with voice, which fascinates me a lot. For example, Kendrick Lamar, I know he likes to use a voice of a drunk man, a voice of an authority, as if he is assuming a persona. Is that one of the content tools that rappers are using these days as well?
Yeah, there's people's individual voices that really stand out. So, I mean, like, I just love Jay-Z's voice. I just love that man's voice. So I just hear it. It does something for me. And so there's sort of an individual taste. So there's other more distinctive voice. There's GID or Q-Tip or like they're people with really distinctive sounds. And Kendrick Lamar for sure has a particular voice quality that's unusual. And so there's certainly room for different tastes there, and it speaks to different people in different ways. But behind that is also some different accents and dialects. So there's the Southern rap is something that I always enjoyed. So a group that I really enjoyed in the past is called Goody Mob. It's where CeeLo Green came out of that group. And it just got me really interested into the sound of Southern rappers. And of course, people that listen to a lot of New York rap, there's they expect certain sounds, certain vowels, certain rhymes that are possible there and not elsewhere. So behind a lot of people's voices is their dialects, and there's a certain voice quality to Southerners, Black Southerners in particular, that just feels familiar once you've listened to a lot of it. And there's definitely a different kind of voice in the North. There's different tempo too. There's faster rap in certain areas than others. That's true to a certain extent. So like there's Andre 3000 as a Southerner, and he's known for pretty fast raps. So, but you know, there is some truth that, you know, if you're from Atlanta, like if you met from, they take a bit more time. You say, you know, and they have they'll draw things out a little bit more, and there's some expectation of that in rap. Whereas say somebody from Cleveland or something might just have a very speedy, choppy style. So there's it has to be teased apart what's an individual property, like Andre 3000's as an individual, and then where they're from, like the southern area, and there's some overlap and distinctions, but yeah, and in the most extreme cases, like I was mentioning Young Thug, about where it's just the voice, and he has an angelic voice. It's beautiful. So it's whether he's singing or rapping, it's just really, really, really pleasant, and yeah, it's just good, really enhances whatever melody he's on. So yeah, and that's just obviously part of music, is people's voice. Yeah.
Hip hop is predominantly Black. It originated in Black communities. How important is it for them to express their beliefs, attitudes, and values through rap music? Yeah.
No, it's very important. I mean, the most extreme example is the N-word. It rhymes with ninja. It has a variety of meanings. One of those meanings is survivor, and also a peer. And so there's some evidence that historically the word was used very early among Black slaves. So famously that disempowers the word. You know, it's like taking the sting out of the word when you start using among each other. And it got this connotation of survivor meaning, which is absent from like the word that rhymes with trigger that was used in the South. And then you can tell by the extent to which that word is used, that it's being used in such a radically different way than its historical origin, that and there's no way to interpret that as this word is repeated. Like you wouldn't believe it. It's like one of the most frequently used words in Black Twitter, for instance. The most frequently distinctively Black words, like of all the words that could be used, or even grammatical devices. So it's clearly making a point that, you know, we've taken this word back and using it in completely different ways. And you're not in Kansas anymore. This is our language, and we made it our own. And it's used in ways that, you know, baffle outsiders. So a ninja means me or I. So like a ninja hungry means I'm hungry. Mm-hmm. when so it sounds like a third person or something, but it's a noun, but it's not. It's being used as a pronoun, just to give one example of many uses. And so they've really made it their own and created their new language, which is constantly evolving. So it's and of course, rap is a form of poetry. So it's about conveying your feelings, your emotions, your history, your stories. In large part, rap is aimed at fellow African American youth, typically inner city, often male youth. And so although rap is most widely consumed by, white middle class suburbanites or whatever, it still is primarily aimed, the bulk of it, at peers. And so they speak in their own language and in ways that are understood by their peers. And it's a privilege for outsiders to listen into these stories. They're often harrowing stories about growing up, harrowing stories of poverty and violence, or sometimes just trials, difficulties, and they're described with other peers, and they're showing the way to other peers, the way out of those sorts of troubles. So it's very important that they use the language that they grew up with, the one that was spoken by their peers, the one spoken by their parents, the one spoken by their grandparents, the language that was used at home, as opposed to the language that is found, say, in school or by officials and so on. So yeah, it's very important.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And at the end of this spoken word program, I'd like to ask you just about that. What is your take-home message? Why should we care about language in rap?
Oh, it enriches you. I think we already know a lot of these things, but just spelling them out increases your appreciation of it. It's like, if you don't mind, I'll open up at the end of a chapter I wrote on Eminem. I quote Tim Brennan at the end. So he says, "What if one claimed that the pleasures of rap, like the colors of Da Vinci and the polyphonies of Bach, had to be learned deliberately, as in the art appreciation courses, or that those who could not, at least by projection, understand such pleasures were in some basic sense uneducated? How can one get to the tactical point of insisting on rap's formal expertise when the very sense of it as art is so weak?" And I really like that quote. I think the more you learn about rap, the more you come to appreciate it in the same way that one appreciates art.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for being a part of this podcast.
Yeah, my pleasure, Dusan. Yeah.
That was Darin Flynn, and I was immensely enjoying our conversation, in which he shared his amazing thoughts and knowledge about the language in rap. Listen to the upcoming Linguistically Aware episodes on CJSW 90.9 FM radio station. If you want to know more about linguists based in Calgary, make sure to visit calgarylinguistics.ca. That is all for today. Have a great month and see you soon.